what we've seen across the world is that these billionaire owners are starting to use the teams as assets. You think about your Magesis, you think about those teams. Yes, you could sponsor them, but it's so risky. How do I know that those teams are going to be around 5 years from now with everything that's happening in the league? Johan Rupert can jump in and throw money at those guys at any time. You can do it. And maybe it's not because you want to sponsor poor old Sundowns. Maybe it's because 5 years from now, I want to work with Tate Motsepe. 5 years from now, I want to work with Remgro, Tate Johan Rupert. It was not to go and stop a very big team from spending everywhere. And if you look at what has happened in the world, the big teams are still the big teams. It's not just in Tate Motsepe. Check your owners. Look at where they are board members. Look at who's funding the teams. I don't want to say too much. Welcome everybody to the Joe's Mokoena podcast. My name is Joe's Mokoena. I am your host, and this is a place where I look at some of the hot topics that are happening in our football, put them on the table, give you some insights, my opinions, and hopefully I can spark conversations, whether it be in my comments or whether it's you guys going out into the world and having conversations in your WhatsApp groups, in your friends groups, when you're going to go watch a game, so that we can start having meatier, juicier conversations about our football that can grow it. So if you could please do me the favor of liking, sharing, commenting and subscribing, it would be incredible. Now, I'm not always right, but my job is to just lay it on the table and start the conversation. So please do what I just said so that we can grow this platform and have the conversations from a bigger base. Now, I'm going to be speaking about something very important today. I'm going to be speaking about money. Money, the most important thing in football, because two things have happened, and these are the two conversations that I want to have. Number one, financial fair play. Everyone is coming out and saying that this league needs financial fair play. How can you spend so much money for such a little bit of a return? We need to make this league more competitive for everybody. Everybody deserves a chance. All of that type of stuff. We're going to delve deeply into what financial fair play is and maybe how it's going to apply to the PSL and what sort of unintended consequences it may have. And then number two, I'm going to speak about the clubs themselves. A lot of people have been saying that Mamelodi Sundowns is unsustainable. How dare you spend so much money without a return? How dare you put down 200 million to win a 20 million rand league? How are you going to run that? It's not profit and loss. I want to get into ownership and maybe how we need to change how we view team ownership and go from there. But let's start off with financial fair play. You know, what's interesting about financial fair play is the way we discuss it. We discuss it with the view that you bring in financial fair play to punish the rich teams and to serve the lesser successful teams. You bring in financial fair play to close the tap for Tate Motsepe, and by doing that, you allow the other guys to be able to compete. Right? That is what we view financial fair play as. If I can use an example, it would be like Piano Hub saying that if you have a Lamborghini, if you have a Lamborghini, you wear Gucci, you do all of those things, you're not allowed in the club, sir. You're not allowed in the club. These guys need a fair chance inside the club. You guys are coming in and ruining everything, right? Which is fine. But let's look at the definition of financial fair play. The definition of financial fair play is essentially you are only allowed to spend what you make. So you are only allowed through your commercial activities, through ticketing, through merchandising, through player sales, through all of that stuff. You are only allowed to spend that money on the operational parts of your football team. Transfers of players, signing coaches, doing all of those things. Now, you can still spend on training grounds, the teams overseas, buy stadiums, do all of those type of things. That is sort of exempt from this rule. But essentially, if you've made 50 million and your expenses are 20 million, you have 30 million that you can go out and spend. That is what financial fair play is. And how this applies to the PSL would be Tate Motsepe Foundation. This is not money that the club has earned itself. So you guys pumping that money in is going to stop. You guys pumping that money in is going to be almost illegal. You're not allowed to do that. But here's the catch to the situation. And one of the big problems with the idea of financial fair play in the PSL. Tate Motsepe, yes, funds Sundowns. They throw money at Sundowns. But so does Ntate Zungu. So does Ntate Jomobiela. So do a myriad of the owners in the league. And the reason why I'm going down is that you may stop Mamelodi Sundowns from spending that 200 million, but you also stopping Amazulu from having the 100 million that comes from Tate Zungu that makes that club run, for example. So you'd be hurting a lot of those clubs. And the reason why I say you're hurting those clubs is financial fair play doesn't look at how much money you're making. They don't punish you because of the amount of money you're making. Whether you're making 50 million or whether you're making 500 million, it's the same thing. So that means that a Mamelodi Sundowns, a Kaizer Chiefs, a Kaizer Chiefs and Orlando Pirates will be great. They make profit. But you are now going to look at Sundowns and think that that punishment you give them is going to automatically make them equal to everybody else. But let's play the financial fair play situation through. The financial fair play situation. I'm a sponsor. Financial fair play has just kicked in. You're not allowing owners to put in their money. Now, you look at the league as a sponsor. Where do you go? I think there's 3 types of teams. You look at Kaizer Chiefs and Orlando Pirates, way too expensive. Trying to play there. How much does Vodacom give Kaizer Chiefs, for example? So maybe this is a little bit too expensive, too rich for your blood. Then there's the guys at the bottom. You think about your Magesis, you think about those teams. Yes, you could sponsor them, but it's so risky. How do I know that those teams are going to be around 5 years from now with everything that's happening in the league? How do I know that those teams are going to be run in a way that's going to be profitable enough for them to stay afloat with my money on top? How do I know? How can I look at Royal AM? The Herikwala municipalities, I'm forgetting the name, but the municipality of Herikwala gave them 33 million over 3 years. Within 6 months, the team is gone. Completely done. So as a sponsor, would you go there? Or do you look at that team, man, that is 15-time league champions? That has a footprint across Africa. So if I want to grow in Africa, maybe I go and sponsor them. A team that even with the constraints that would be put in by financial fair play wouldn't die tomorrow. Wouldn't you as a sponsor go, Mamelodi Sundowns, I want to sponsor you guys. Also specifically because they are one of 3 teams that are left. If SuperSport does leave, there are 3 teams that are left that have been in every season since 1996. Also to the fact that Mamelodi Sundowns pre-Patrice Motsepe's money was winning leagues in the PSL era. Who would you as a sponsor fall to? So commercially, already, not only have you taken my money away that my owner has given me, but you're also putting me in a situation where a sponsor is not going to come and charity case me. And Sundowns is one of the teams in the league that could very quickly become commercially viable. Very quickly. So what has financial fair play helped in this situation? But here's the big one. Here's the big one. In England, what they found is that not only did they have to bring in financial fair play, but they had to back up FFP with something called PSR, Profit and Sustainability Rules, which basically was a doctrine that was added to say that not only is your owner not allowed to come in or excess monies, what we've realized is that man. Why is it that, Aston Villa gets an airplane deal with an airline for 20 million. But then you guys get a deal with a similarly sized airline for 100 million. What do you mean? How is that right? It's part of the case that Manchester City was making to say, the league made to Manchester City to say, it can't be, this is not right, it doesn't make sense. City then replied that, how do you set a limit for those type of things without telling us what the other stuff looks like? It's a very technical case. But in any case, are you guys telling me that Ntate Motsepe, that Ntate Rupert can't go out and get sponsors. Can't go out and make a couple of calls. Can't go out and make this thing sustainable. And maybe it's not because you want to sponsor poor old Sundowns. Maybe it's because 5 years from now, I want to work with Ntate Motsepe. 5 years from now, I want to work with Remgro, Tate Johan Rupert. I want to sit down. Those are the people that I want to work with. So I'm going to take a hit now, sponsor the team and go from there. Not to mention that Mamelodi Sundowns, sponsorship is probably a situation where they just need to answer an email or take a phone call. There's probably lots of brands that are lined up to work with Mamelodi Sundowns right now, from what I explained. So then I go, when you look at that, did you not just again shoot teams in the foot? Because it's relationships. It's not just Ntate Motsepe. Check your owners. Look at where they are board members. Look at who's funding the teams. I don't want to say too much because I'll get into trouble, but look at who's funding the teams. Look at how they're funding the teams. I'm going to get into that in the second part of all of this. But it's very important to understand that financial fair play is not a rule that was made to save clubs. After defining what it is, I believe it was Sepp Blatter at the time, or the European guy, I'm forgetting his name, Platini, sorry, I think it was, explained that what financial fair play also allows you to do is to make sure that when owners are pumping money, if they leave, you're not somewhere in the middle. Look at Bidvest Wits. Bidvest was like, we're no longer going to be throwing money down this hole. The moment they withdrew that funding, Wits died. We were talking about the rumors of Supersport. Stan Matthews, to be clear, has come out and said that, no, it's not true. But you're looking at Supersport. If MultiChoice decides that you guys are no longer part of our budget and goes, oh, siya crepes, siya hamba, then you guys are going to die. So part of what financial fair play was to say that at any level of the teams, you have to be able to run your club profitably with or without that injection, which means you need to learn how to go and get sponsors. You need to learn how to do your admin. You need to learn how to get your transfers right so you can balance out the transfers. Your net transfers must always be positive, so that these teams can be going concerns in future. It was not to go and stop a very big team from spending everywhere. And if you look at what has happened in the world, the big teams are still the big teams. Manchester United, on paper, can still make a lot more money. I know Sir Jim Ratcliffe is saying all of these funny things. They're on the stock exchange. They could sell tomorrow and make money right now through a capital raise. You look at a Kaizer Chiefs. A Kaizer Chiefs can make money tomorrow without winning a trophy, without doing anything, with the sponsors they currently have. They've attuned that business model to that. So again, how many of our teams in the league are like that? Let's not pretend like we don't live in a league where the owner goes broke and the team goes away. Do you know why? Because the owner is funding that team. The owner is funding that team. And financial fair play would stop you from being able to do that. We are not at the level just yet to be entertaining those type of things, unfortunately. So this is why you'd have to look at something different. It's not going to be financial fair play. I think what people are actually talking about is a salary cap. So for those who don't know, in the States, NBA, NFL, those type of sports, they have what's called a salary cap. So all the teams basically sit down and go, okay guys, all of us, no matter if your Dallas Cowboys are worth 6 billion or your Jacksonville Jaguars are worth 1, you're only allowed to spend $200 million in the year, let's say on salaries. You're only allowed to spend 200 million, which means that you have to fit all of your players under this money. So how it works is that what a salary cap does, it stops you from being able to sign a ton of stars and flood your bench with a ton of stars. So for example, Sundowns would be in trouble if the salary cap was 250 million and they've spent, let's say 180, let's say, and I know these are bigger numbers, but they've spent 180. And now they need to negotiate that 70 that's left to fill out the entire team, which means that at any given moment, you can only have X amount of stars in a team. So what it allows is that some of these stars will choose to go be a big star, go Amazul. I'll be paid the same as the other big stars. I'll have all of the perks that those guys have. But because Sundowns physically, financially can't take on another player, some of the smaller teams go, okay, we'll use some of our cap to bring a star player in, you bring fans in, you sell some jerseys, you do all of those things. That is what a salary cap means. And this is on earnings. So in the PSL, you'd probably have to do two. It's transfers and how much money. Now, what happens that side that's a little bit different from here is that you don't negotiate new contracts. So if I sign a 4-year, 50 million deal, let's say a 4-year, 40 million deal, it means that I'm going to be earning 10 million a year. Now, those teams can trade between each other and say, okay, I've got this player that's 30 million on my books. He's done 1 year with us. We paid him 10. He's 30, still in the books. How about we give you him, you assume the 30, and you give me maybe a player worth 5 and maybe some draft picks, and I can maybe rebuild the value of the team. They trade. The contracts don't end. You don't buy out a contract, right? I don't think it would work in our context, but I think that is what people are talking to more than when they speak about financial fair play than what financial fair play actually is. So I think for me, it's a valiant idea. I think thinking about it, people might want to do it, but the truth of the matter is that it doesn't work that way and probably would not work in our league, because our league, as great as Chiefs, Pirates and Sundowns do money-wise, most of the teams financially can't afford to lose out on owner money. Now, let's get into the second topic. Okay, so I know I stopped the video a lot, and a lot of you are wondering, why are you asking for money? So I wanted to show you. I asked for money because I want to do more of this. Huh? But the truth of the matter is that it took over an hour in order just to render that shot. And it takes even longer when I'm doing my normal content because, guys, here's the unsung hero of the channel. And unfortunately, Shem, but the screen is broken. I have to use a second screen, and the performance is not up to it. So I'd really love to upgrade things like that. And when you look over here, this is what the setup looks like. Rehenga di patlo and rehenga di green screen, which is a reality of being a South African content creator. Also, this is what people think is my studio. It's actually my house. So if you still don't know that I'm doing all of this from my home, then I don't know. But that is essentially what I want to do. More of these cool things. But I need you guys to please help me out by donating 50 Rand or more into this account. You know, we're fighting for multi-choice. And for multi-choice, but there is subscription models all over the place. And I'd love to give the biggest quality while also being able to pay my rent and do things like that. That is where your money is going. And I promise to give you only the best content that I can if you do throw something in. So I just wanted to show you guys what I want to do with your money. I want to take this South African football and fulfill my dream of taking it into the future. But thank you guys so much. Remember, this is the bank account that you deposit into. Get back into the video. How do you spend 200 million and only win a league for 20 million? Is that fair? How do you spend so much money and not make profit? How do you do all of that? That is what I've been hearing over the past few weeks when we look at Mamelodi Sundowns. You know, they're not making a profit. That's not sustainable. They're making it tough for other teams, all of that stuff. And they've been asking if that is a good way to own a team. I think we need to change the way that we view ownership. We view ownership at the ground level. So the example I'm going to use is Checkers. This Checkers that is outside your gate, our Checkers is this side, so I'm just pointing, that is outside your gate has to sell products and buy products and make a profit again. For that one Checkers to stay a going concern for the company as a whole, you need that Checkers to be making profit. And I think this is how we treat our teams. We treat our teams as though giddy shop, that survival depend on what's coming in and what's going out. But then, if you take it away from this ground level and you look at the bigger picture, that's where you start to see that maybe Checkers head office doesn't necessarily care that this Checkers by itself is profitable. But let's look at the portfolio of the assets that we have. Let's look at the portfolio of how much did that storefront cost? What can we spin from it? What is that asset worth? How much is that one and that one and that one? And we put them together to allow us to do certain things. Before I go too far with this example, Ntate Motsepe owns Mamelodi Sundowns. Ideally, you need your owner not to be in the game for profit. What we've seen across the world is that these billionaire owners are starting to use the teams as assets. So, for example, I'm an Arsenal fan. My owner is Stan Kroenke. Stan Kroenke has a company set up called Kroenke Sports and Entertainment. Kroenke Sports and Entertainment is the company that owns Arsenal, that owns the Denver Nuggets, that owns the Colorado Rapids, if I'm not mistaken, that owns all of his sporting franchises under one thing. And what that allows him to do is to say, I'm going to leverage this asset that is Arsenal to do other things. Most recently, they built SoFi Stadium, one of the most expensive stadiums in the world. What did he use in the collateral to get the loan? Arsenal. And he said, guys, I've got this asset. Can I borrow against it so that I can go build the stadium? So when you start thinking about teams as assets, you start realizing that Ntate Motsepe and the Motsepe Foundation don't just own Sundowns. They've got a majority stake with the Bulls alongside Johan Rupert. He's got other little teams that he's assembled. And while it may not be a situation where he needs to go borrow, obviously a lot of them don't like using their own money because there's interest. It's a whole business thing. But he now owns those franchises, owns those things, and he can wield considerable power. So, for example, him owning a majority stake of the Bulls and owning Mamelodi Sundowns means that in Pitori, there's certain organizations that he sits on that now he wields soft power over. You know that stadium sa HM Beach, wanting to buy HM Beach. Imagine how much power Ntate Motsepe has to be able to do those things or sway council if he's one of the key stakeholders within the city, let's say. That's one. Number two, some of these owners own these teams for their own personal prestige or to open up other avenues for them. Ntate Motsepe is the president of CAF. Can you imagine the type of people he's meeting? I know he's a billionaire, but can you imagine the type of people he's meeting? The type of conversations he can have from that point of view, from that vantage point. The type of opportunities he can unearth. Think about New World TV that owns the rights to broadcast CAF tournaments on the continent. If you do a little digging, you'll find a connection. I don't want to speak about it. But it allows you to sit in certain rooms. It allows you to move in certain ways. You think about, I'll use an example from the news now. Elon Musk invests in Donald Trump's campaign. Then that investment may look stupid on the outside, but now he can use that connection and relationship to open doors that maybe he wouldn't be able to open normally. Billionaire talk. But more importantly, like I spoke about, he spends 200 million, spends 200 million, spends 200 million, spends 500 million, spends this much. Now, Mamelodi Sundowns went from being a team that's worth $20 million to being a team that's worth 600. What does that mean? Even just on a crude basis without all of the investment stuff. If I sell Sundowns today, I'm making a profit. Do you know why Abo Bitvest were owning Abo Vets? Do you know why Abo MultiChoice were owning Abo Supersport? It's also because those guys form part of being one of the assets that they can leverage later. But then there's the third part to all of this, and this goes across the league. Owning some of the teams allows you to divert some of your profits made from your other companies into these teams. So, for example, Tate Zungu has Zungu Investments that's invested in Amazulu, but also Greenrod is invested in Amazulu. And what they do is, for tax breaks with government, they take money, they call it corporate social investment. So these companies have to take some of their profits and put it towards building communities, helping the society at large. And a lot of them go, okay, I own a team. So can you imagine? I'm taking some of my profits, I'm putting it into this team. This team's value is growing. I am growing my footprint wherever that team is. Ubab Zungu, we know about him, Koteben. I'm growing all of that, but then also my asset is growing. I can borrow off of that, and I'm getting a tax cut because I'm investing in the community, in society directly. So you see how all of that means that I don't need to necessarily make a profit off of this. I don't even need necessarily to care about the team. The business models that some of these teams have chosen, you look at a Stellenbosch has chosen. Yes, they, at any time, Johan Rupert can jump in and throw money at those guys. At any time, he can do it. But if they're sustainable on their own, there goes my asset. And oh, by the way, the Stellenbosch FC is part of the Stellenbosch Academy of Sports. Oh no, the Stellenbosch Academy of Sports, SAS, which includes some of the varsity teams, other sports teams around Stellenbosch, which are all kind of funded by Remgro, Johan Rupert's company. They get tax breaks, they get soft power within Stellenbosch, they get so many different things that don't have to do with making money in your pocket. And maybe if our teams and owners started looking at these teams as assets, it would be way better. Maybe if they started looking at these teams and saying, okay, how can I spin my ownership here to grow in the Eastern Cape? Let's say cheaper. How can Babchipa Pengesi use that influence to maybe grow his own companies on the side too, through the relationships he builds through the football, maybe grow Chipa United's footprint in the Eastern Cape in order for them to grow. And then if push comes to shove and you have to sell the team, at least you have grown the asset. So we need to remove ourselves from looking at football from on the ground. You need to open it up and see what type of other benefits exist that are elsewhere, that a billionaire, a multi-millionaire might gain from this. And then we have to ask the question that if Motsepe is doing this correctly, Tate Motsepe is doing this correctly, if Chiefs and Pirates and those guys are doing it correctly, why aren't our other teams doing the same thing? If you've noticed, I have not spoken about a direct investment. If you notice, I have not spoken about somebody coming out of their pockets. It's a foundation, it's a Remgro, it's this, it's that. But then some of our owners are coming out of their own pockets. So no, a team does not have to be profitable for it to be a good thing. You spending money does not have to be a black hole. Uribero is on the books of Sundowns. Sales is on the books of Sundowns. They're doing really well. So that means that as an asset, if I were to buy Sundowns tomorrow, I own those contracts and could possibly sell those guys, which means that the value of the team has now expanded. It's bigger. I can now go to the bank and go, hey, this is my asset. Can I get more money to do whatever I need to do? So we need to start looking bigger. We need to start looking at them differently. Not to mention, companies get taxed differently, but I'm not an accountant. I don't want to get into that. But can we start looking at that a little bit differently and figuring out that it's not all about the exchange of money? Sometimes money is not tangible. It's not paper, zifela. Sometimes money is value. And if you really peep what Sundowns has done, the value that has gone into that team now, and the value that you can gain from that team, incredible. Thank you guys so much for joining me. Tell me what you guys think in the comments. I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye, everyone.